with my special guest, great friend. I could go on. He is an, what do you say? You are oh my God, a Juno Award winner. I think American Music Award winner, some kind of award winner in the music industry other than a Juno. And a Grammy. Is that a Grammy? A Grammy. He's a Grammy. Like, yes, this is Fatima. This is me, me in my element. I get that, we have a brain fart, or you call it old people's brain. I get that sometimes. I get tongue tied, but this is us being live, interactive, direct. So I want to introduce to you my good friend, Carl Harvey. Welcome, Carl.
Hi, Fatima. It's been a long time.
Yes, it has. You look marvelous as always.
Oh, thank you. And so do you. Radiant.
Thank you. So, Carl, coming here, I want you to tell us about yourself, and then tell us a bit about your business.
Well, it's been a long journey for me. Starting as a musician, I think I went professional around age 17. I was still in high school. And, so music has taken me all over the world. I've been on maybe 4 continents. Well, definitely Australia, Asia, North and South America, Europe. I haven't been to India. And so I did a check one time of countries. And I think I'd visited something like 134. Yeah, so I've had a pretty long musical career, and and success is relative, because to me there's always more. I'm trying to reach more all the time, and I never did attain that huge financial success that some very few of my peers, but some have achieved. Right. So, that has remained elusive, but I've had a wonderful career and achieved things that I didn't even imagine when I started out. I was just doing it for the fun and for the love of it. So, music has taken me all over Canada, all over the world, and I have met, amazing people as a result of this career. In about 2006, while I was endorsing guitars from a company, and they started to do a design for me, and it was supposed to be an artist signature instrument. Now you'll notice that a lot of companies will have guitars that are named after or named by artists who are people that represent that particular line, and some companies have been able to achieve iconic success because certain people have played their instruments. Like Jimi Hendrix, he was never officially endorsed by Fender, as far as I know. As far as I know, he bought his guitars. It wasn't in the days when companies just gave stuff away just to have that, rapport with the market they were looking for. And Hendrix, to this day, has sold more Fender guitars than probably all other artists combined. The Fender Stratocaster today is the most popular electric guitar, and I think due to, in no small part, Jimi Hendrix's participation.
Cool. And so what's the name of the band that you're a part of, that you're in? Or how many?
I've been involved in a number of bands, some Canadian based, right? So starting off with Crack of Dawn, right, which is still active today, and Messenger as a producer, and with Toots and the Maytals, which is probably the biggest band that I'm associated with. Not probably, it is the biggest band that I'm associated with. And that has taken me over, a 4-decade span.
Cool. That sounds really interesting. And then are you a dad, a grandfather? Like, what's your family life like?
All the above. I'm a dad to 3 kids, right? So my and a grandfather, right? So my eldest lives in the United States. He's in Oregon, and he's married with 2 boys. And my daughter, also a musician, she's still in Ontario, but up north. And she is involved in other disciplines as well. She writes. She's in psychology. She's got a series called oh my God, she's gonna beat me up for this, but I know what it's about. What she does is she helps artists break through their creative blocks, right? And then my youngest is still at York, and he would like to be a teacher of all things because he had a rough time in school, and he feels that he could go there and do a better job than was done for him, right? At least by most. There are some influential teachers, and I think he's decided to model himself after those and to carry that forward. And he's got varied interests. He's very talented, but he doesn't have an interest in becoming someone in the entertainment industry. So he's going to Japan, providing COVID and all those other things allow, early next year to study Japanese as a second language.
Nice. Nice. And you had mentioned creating your own brand. So what's your brand called?
Well, the brand itself is Carl Harvey Instruments, right? But under Carl Harvey Instruments, like the first product that we created was the Rastacaster. And the Rastacaster, it's like a tongue-in-cheek way of saying Stratocaster with a Rasta element to it. The Stratocaster is, like I said, the most popular electric guitar ever made. And I think that when Leo Fender named that guitar, he was borrowing from Stradivarius. Stratocaster, Stradivarius, just different ways. So I am just thinking, I'm deriving my Rastacaster from the Stratocaster, as he derived his Stratocaster from the Stradivarius.
Got it. So you play the electric guitar, and your business is manufacturing electric guitar underneath your brand.
Yeah, the long range vision is to have a whole line of instruments, right? This was just my foray into it, right? I play electric guitar, so naturally I'm going to do something that I'm most familiar with, and something that I can, promote with some degree of authenticity on my own.
That makes sense.
Right? Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, what I was writing something recently for someone who will be doing some social media marketing for me, and I had to do a description and think about the why. Why did I start this? I found that Black musicians in particular had given iconic status to a lot of these instruments, like the Stratocaster, Jimi Hendrix, all those blues guys, Buddy Guy, B.B. King, Gibson, and all these different brands. But we're always being consumers. And very few of the companies actually created instruments with those people's names attached to them. And in many cases, they've benefited without having to give back. So I wanted to I am creating something, right, that is reflective of not just the music, but also the people who create the music. And our mission is to give back to that community. Why doesn't Fender have music schools in, inner city where you have a lot of kids with a lot of talent but no access. Where did they find the next Jimi Hendrix? Where did they find the next, Buddy Guy or someone else like that coming up?
Right.
Yeah. So
with that being said, it sounds like, what you want to do inside of your give back is you also, you want to create something for musicians and for up and coming musicians, for young kids, to have like a hope inside of this business.
Absolutely.
Make it, and then a hope that the instruments or the people that make the instruments that they play would recognize that and give back. So my question to you is, what does hope mean to you?
Hope for me is being in possibility, right? Living in impossibility. What is possible? It may not be right now, but it can happen tomorrow if I start my trajectory right now to head in a particular direction, right? So it's being able to see the future before it happens, and then to take the necessary actions in faith to make those things happen.
That's a very good description, hope that things will happen and the fact that it will happen. And then, being, you can draw from, and for this next couple of questions, draw from being a father or being a musician for so long and staying in that discipline from since you were a teenager. So share with us your journey of hell to hope inside of your life experiences.
Be a dreamer. Don't let others determine your dreams and determine your future. Be a dreamer. And if you take actions in faith, you can make those dreams come true.
Okay.
Don't be afraid. Yeah. So for me, that's living in hope.
That's living in hope.
Yeah,
okay.
For me.
Got it. And what about, do you have a hell to hope journey that you could share?
I would never ever consider anything that I've been in as hell. I've been in difficult situations, but I always see that as being the launching point for a new opportunity. Why am I here? Sometimes, like, for instance, how this guitar thing started. It started from a rejection because I was working with another company who I had an endorsement with. They were giving me free guitars, right? And it came to the point where I wanted my name, or I wanted something that I had created to be a part of their lineup. And they thought it was a great idea. And like many companies, people got shifted around, fired, moved along, and then new people came in and said, "Oh, we don't like this idea. Our identity is more along the heavy metal and the harder styles of music, right?" And I guess they weren't vibing with this whole Rasta Black identity type thing for their line of guitars. So I was telling a friend of mine who was also in the business, and someone who was associated with some pretty heavy rock dudes. He was one of Eddie Van Halen's gurus, and he says, "Why don't you do it yourself?" And for a second I thought, "I'd do it myself. How much that's gonna cost?" And and I'm starting thinking all the barriers, right? And then the little light goes off. So, why don't you do it yourself? And it's not been easy. It has definitely not been easy. And I have had multiple failures. But from every failure, I've learned something, right? And I continue. And I got to the point at one point where I thought, okay, this is it. I'm done. I'm collecting my marbles and I'm going home. Right? And then, the other voice goes off again and says, "That's where the hope comes in now," right? It says, "Why? But what if right around that corner is where you will find the next thing that will move you forward. And you're going to stop now.
100%.
You know? Yeah. So I think that's what keep hopeful people going.
100%. I read the book Think and Grow Rich, and in there it
I've read that
talks,
too.
that's where that always keeps me moving forward. And that's something I
Yeah.
want the viewers to know is like you come, you get your pick, and you go and you dig and you dig and you're digging for gold, and you're not going in the right direction. You don't pack it up and sell all your equipment. You just move a little bit to the left or right of that fault line and you dig again. And that's where the person who came along and bought all the stuff, okay, if he digged here, I'm going to move a little bit older, boom, struck gold. So you just have to keep going and move a little left, a little right, shift, carrying that hope. So for me, it sounds like, as a musician, there's certain things that you wanted to carry on for a legacy for yourself, for your family, and making an instrument was it. And the one company, they first said yes, did a change up, said no, and then having a conversation with somebody who gave you that hope, you just said, you know what, I can do it myself. And it's been a long road. So what lesson did you get from that sort of rejection to where you are now inside of that road? What are some of the lessons that you got?
You're going to get a lot of no's in life, but the only real no that matters or yeses that matters are the ones that come from within. If you tell yourself, no, this can't happen, guess what? It's not going to happen. And if you tell yourself, yes, it can happen, it will happen, and you're willing to take the actions, then it doesn't really matter who the naysayers will be and are, because they will always be there. And they are part of the process. You embrace those things. I embrace the naysayers, because that just gives me one more bit of motivation to break through whichever barriers they think that they're setting up. Life cannot, if life was just one easy, smooth sail, how would we grow?
That's so true. And did you find that, as a Black musician, you had to break down even more barriers where it came from shifting to being a musician to being an entrepreneur?
Absolutely. I'm still breaking those barriers down. There were people that I was dealing with within the industry that I could detect resentment from them when I, asked them to deliver stuff on time. So now I'm speaking to them like a boss, and they hate that. It's okay to speak to them as a peer, but to hold them responsible, they don't like that. Or some people don't like it, right? And I have to check in with myself to say, okay, well, what do I do here? What's my objective, right? Sometimes I have to be more diplomatic than I really want to be. But I always keep my objective in mind, right? And sometimes that may mean not blowing something up because I have an emotional moment. Okay, you ticked me off, so now I'm going to let you have it. And then I blow up my whole process, the process of venting, right? So sometimes I have my private vent sessions. And then when I deal with the person I have to deal with, I've already vented, right? Whether it's to my mirror or my partner or somewhere else. And during that venting, I devised a strategy as to how I'm going to achieve my objective.
That sounds like a great lesson right there on this journey of, being a musician for over 4 decades, being on the stage, then to being a producer, to being a consumer, then somebody again who's a producer of an instrument. And what I'm hearing from you is that the lesson is, staying true to yourself and what your brand is, no matter the people that you may encounter who don't like you or become resentful, is always staying true. When you get upset, check your emotions, go find some place or someone to let that off. And that sounds like great advice, for young musicians out there who are up and coming. That sounds like a great advice. You're going to have people who are for you. You'll have people who are against you. If this is your passion, if this is your dream, stick to it. You may or may not achieve the financial success that you want, but it's still part of your journey. And then you can ebb and flow into something else. So I think that is such good advice for anyone at any time and at any age. That is what I deemed hope to be. At hope for anyone at any time and at any age. And what you've just given us is that. So now my question to you is, if you wanted to take that to another level and increase your hope, what advice can you give someone?
Where I'm at right now is I am being true to myself as to what my limitations are. So I know, be able to identify the areas that you have expertise, your own expertise, right? Where others are coming to you for your advice, for your judgment. And in those areas where you do not have expertise, don't be afraid to seek that expertise from someone else, right? But in choosing those people, you have to really be tuned into your intuition, because you can be also led right down the garden path. And I've just had an experience where I did with a company in the United States. They made a prototype guitar for me, right? And because I put the order in when COVID just hit, or just before COVID hit, right? I wasn't expecting it to go smoothly because, half of their staff wasn't there. They had to cut their production in half because they could only have so many people in the building at a time, et cetera, right? So I was very gracious. I worked with them, expecting the best. Over a year passed, and then they sent me the prototype. I was aghast when I saw what was delivered. Right? So I had to go back and talk to the previous manufacturer, who was more expensive, but did a great job. So luckily, I didn't have my emotions take over when I was dissatisfied with some stuff that he had done, right? And just blow that bridge up because I thought I had found someone else. Right? So I had to backtrack and say, okay, didn't work the first time because of A, B, C. Okay, can we make it work this time? Doesn't mean that I'm just going to totally sit back and expect it. I'm going to be, and I know that this is someone I need to hold accountable. That's just their nature. But I've accepted that as just being a byproduct of who that person is. Just like you're in a relationship with someone, right? And your husband may be the greatest guy and greatest cook and everything, but he doesn't like to make his bed. Right? Sometimes you have to just accept that. So far as long as the other things are there.
I got that. And that's a really good advice, again, for anyone at any time. Don't burn bridges, I'm hearing. Just because you think you found the next best thing, don't just toss everything out, the baby out with the bathwater. You're done with them. Let your emotions get the best of you. Yell and
Yeah.
scream and march off, and you're done. To only go find out this next best thing is not really producing what you want, while the
Yep.
other thing did produce what you want. So I'm hearing how to increase your level of hope, really. And, this is a phrase I always use. Like, faith without action is dead. Hope without action is dead. Always be in action. You're always practicing to check your emotions, practicing where you're coming from. What's your intention? And don't let anybody divert you from that intention. And once you're there, you're going to keep at it. You're going to see results. You're going to see that your hope fulfills your faith. Your faith gives you the results, and then you hit destiny or that jackpot, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in a business. This is really good, sound advice. So, and you sound like a philosopher there, Carl. And I want to know, what are you doing to promote hope? Is it through your music? Is it to other things? What are you doing to promote hope in the world?
I think the best way to promote hope, or anything else for that matter, is just to exemplify it. Talk about things all you want, but just like your kids watch the parents, no use telling your kids not to smoke if you're running out the back after 5 minutes to light up. Right? So, for me, really to generate hope, the best way is to actually produce some results that others can see. People are into tangibles. When they see that you're producing something from what you have spoken, then they start to recognize their own power. They're like, well, he could do that. I can do that. Right. And then the other thing within that is to help however you can to stimulate and create possibilities for others.
And do you have, what are you doing to help stimulate and create? Is it through your line? Are you doing some other things? Like what other things are you out there doing to promote that? Tell us, Carl, what are you doing?
Well, okay, so where I started off with this, right, is, I started off with a really high-end instrument, and I realized, okay, that's my dream instrument, okay? I am a seasoned professional, and maybe someone in my position can afford that kind of instrument. But it's not going to be accessible to the masses. So I had to make a really tough decision. I didn't want to do this in the beginning. I had to start to look for an offshore manufacturer that would create something really close to the custom stuff that I was building in the United States, and to make it come in at an accessible price point. And wow, I had some real challenges with that, because I'm working with people. I don't see things until after they're done. And sometimes when despite the fact of sending computer files and, CNC files, so you think, okay, it's a CNC machine, okay, how can you mess up? You plug the program in and it's gonna cut the wood the way it's supposed to be cut, and etc. And lo and behold, you get something like, what the heck? Didn't you notice that this little thing was off? Or don't you see that that paint line is not straight? You have the nerve to send that to me. And this is where, after, especially when you've paid for this stuff, your emotions, like, sometimes I just want to blow my stack. But what I've done is, like, I've accepted some of these mistakes and work with the people to dial it in, right? So one of the things that I'm building is an initiative to be able to give some of these instruments. I'm not at the point yet, but if you don't start with a vision, it doesn't happen, right? I want to give away some of these instruments to like some of the schools, like say music schools, Jamaica, community centers, that kind of thing, right? And I started something some time ago with a company based in San Francisco called Guitars, Not Guns. So some friends of mine who were doing that, right? So we were actually calling up manufacturers who have B stock laying around, and sometimes they sell them, sometimes they don't, but they're good enough for someone who's trying to get started to have an instrument in their hand to inspire them to move to the next level, right? So this is not an initiative I'm going to take on wholly by myself, but I think I need to get it started, right? I also want to get instruments in the hands of people in countries that don't normally have access to that level of instrument, except at very exorbitant prices, like in Africa and such. There's this girl I'm following now. I think she's in Nigeria. Fabulous guitar player. And I'm seeing like companies who are giving her guitars now to try out. Hey, play this, like Fender and Epiphone and like all of these standard companies. I'm like, okay, why? There's no Black-owned company. Here we go again. It's another Jimi Hendrix promoting products that are not going to be funneling back into our community. Of course, they'll give her a guitar. Why not? Because it's going to cause more young ladies like her to go buy their product. And then that money goes up to them and their causes. Right?
Right. So you're going to reach out to her and have her play one of your guitars as a Black-owned?
I will, yes. I certainly intend to try, yes.
I think that's a good idea. And so for me, what I'm hearing is that you're into practical things to give people hope. Like you're going to go and you're going to see that there's a need. And then, the people around you inside of your sphere of influence would see, okay, Carl has gone out there and created his brand of guitar. Carl is now partnering with other companies to put musical instruments in the hands of children instead of guns. Then you're going to look for up and coming musicians and put one of your guitars in their hand. And then
right.
If you start to make money and a profit from that, you can start a nonprofit organization that gives back instruments or money to get instruments to young people.
Yeah, and not just in music, that's where my strength is, right? So I'm starting there. But I think what I see happening a lot is that we are not generating enough in our communities of colors. It's more, we have been cultivated as consumers. And our natural tendency is to be creators, right? So I don't want to be just a consumer. I'm a creator, right? So I want to be able to have the things that I create reach the people that I wanted to reach, and also to be reflective of those people, The original, for instance, I'm sticking with guitars because that's what we're talking about right now. Right?
Yep.
The original guitars that people like, say, Hendrix and all these people that made all these brands really huge, right? Those guitars weren't created for them. They weren't created with those people in mind. It wasn't created with a Jimmy in mind. It was created with the Beach Boys and the Ventures and all the surf players in mind, right? The guitars, the colors of the guitars were based on automobiles of that era. So when those things were created, they were created with the identity in mind. And we've adopted all of that. Right? So I'm saying like, hey, why can't we create things with the identity of the users that we are targeting in mind. You know?
I like that.
And,
so do you have one? I was just about to say, can you show us?
I have, this is
Perfect.
my, right here. So this, I've got a session that I'm doing right when I end with you right here. I've had to convert my living room to a home studio through COVID. You know, yeah. So you know, this is Fashion the Red, Green, and Gold. This guitar is created based on a Stratocaster, of course. You know, I'm not going to deny that. And but it has ergonomic differences, right? Like look at the back, this neck. See, it's completely ergonomic. You can reach everything, it's smooth, right? If you look at the original, at the Stratocaster, they've got a square block right here. So every time as a player, I go up, bam, I hit my hand on that edge of that square block. I hated that, right? So I just took something that was already in existence and how can I make it better? How can I make it more comfortable for me as someone who's been playing for the longest time, right? And another thing I always hated were pickups that made noise, right? So a friend of mine who is the designer of these pickups, he's also an MIT grad and a very, very, very smart man by the name of Scott Lawing. He did these pickups, and these are my own signature pickups. You're not going to go buy these in any store, right? Cool. And they are underneath, like most pickups are made with one magnet and 6 hole pieces, like the traditional Strat pickup. And then there's a copper winding around that. Underneath these are really 6 individual pickups. There's one pickup per string. You just can't see it because of the plastic covering, right? But it has the same kind of tone as a traditional instrument, but none of the deficiencies. There's like, it's silent. I could plug into a signal chain and turn my amp right up and none of the zzz noise and all that kind of stuff. You know, with my original Strats, I had to get on stage and I keep turning, trying to find a place where I wasn't picking up a radio frequency, you know, to avoid noise. And of course, you can't do that on a big stage because you've got like lighting packs with tens of thousands of voltage running around you and RF, and it's the most hostile environment you can imagine. You know?
Right. So what you did was then, you know, inside of hoping and, you know, hoping and not just hoping, you decided to create an instrument out of your years of experience that was ergonomically designed and didn't have some of the challenges that you saw in other instruments. Like that right there can give somebody, a young person, a musician listening to this interview, hope. I can take my years of experience where I see that there is a gap and I can create something that's now creating, that could just land on somebody like, wait a minute, I've got all these ideas, you know, and maybe they can reach out to Carl. So Carl, where can people reach you? What is your email address? What's your website? Where can people find you?
Well, I got a number of them. If it's related to the guitars, it would be Carl at carlharveyinstruments.com or info at carlharveyinstruments.com, right? And my personal website, which I have not been paying much attention to recently, it's carlharvey.net, right? And then there's all the social media stuff. So I'm on IG at Carl Harvey Music and Carl Harvey Instruments as well, and Facebook and Twitter. I don't deal with Twitter much. Twitter to me is just like the big toilet wall of the world. I can't deal with Twitter, man. Like 5 minutes of Twitter and I'm depressed.
So people can,
the venom pit.
So people can find you really on IG and they can email you. And then is at rastacast.com?
Well, rastacaster.com lands at Carl Harvey Instruments.
Okay. Cool. Okay.
Yeah, I just got that just in case someone else decided to grab it. So I have it. Yeah.
And that's a good idea. So Carl, you I really want to thank you for coming on and sharing like your world with us, especially giving us more insight of being a musician. And then, because they say, as a musician, then your time, it's a limited amount of time, and then, you fade out. But you have shown us that after 40 years of the industry, playing with the bands that you're playing with, even having a Grammy with Tootsie and the Maytals, 2 Grammys with Tootsie and the Maytals, the passing of your friend, there's still hope. There's still life in you. There's still much more that you want to give back. And you want to give it in the form of instruments. You want to give it in the form of programs. So we want to thank you for giving us that hope and knowing that at any time we can push that start button and come up with a new creation and a new creation and a new creation.
And a new one and a new one, right? And if I had 10 lifetimes, believe me, I'd find something to do with it.
That's right.
But another thing that I'm doing right now. So here, the instruments that I'm doing right now, like I decided to start off with an Afrocentric motif, Rastacasta. And, I'm working on a new guitar called Dr. Bird, which is like a takeoff from the hummingbird, Jamaican national bird. And, Dr. Bird sings, And the other area that I see a lot of growth in is female players. I am seeing some female players out there now that are like phenomenal. And the physicality of a woman is different from that of a man, okay? So the average woman has smaller hands. Why aren't instruments being made that address that, Do they all want to play instruments that were made for guys who are into bikes and cars and, No. So I've got something coming up. I'm not going to give it away too much because I don't know who's going to be watching this.
Awesome. I think that is good. Like you're a visionary, right? And that gives us hope to being a visionary.
Yeah. Why should you go and you should be able to play something that as soon as you step on stage, someone sees it before you play your first note and something is already being projected, right? Like, this, this is what I'm about. Like, so when they see my guitar, boom. I've walked onto stages with this guitar, and I'm telling you, like, I played Coachella, which is like one of the biggest festivals that happens in the United States, right? And before I even played a note, I heard people look at my guitar and say, that's the kind of response. Because they'd never seen anything like that before. Cool. And they knew right away that, hey, this guy is, he's the other badass or he's posing. You've got to be able to live up to your end after that.
Yes. Awesome, Carl. That is so good. So, any last words you want to give people for that message of hope before we sign off? Any last message you want to give?
Yeah. Stay in possibility. And stay away from people that bring you down. You know who they are. Avoid them.
Awesome. Great.
Don't give them your time.
Don't give them your time. Stay in possibility and avoid the naysayers. You heard it live here on Messages of Hope from Carl Harvey, a musician extraordinaire, entrepreneur, dad, grandfather, all around great guy. If you don't like Carl, something's up with you. If you don't like Carl Harvey, something's up with you. So I want to thank you, Carl, for being here, and I wish everyone a super fantabulous day, and join us again. Bye for now.